Aryna Sabalenka exposes Coco Gauff. I can't stay silent anymore. Those words didn't just hit the tennis world, they detonated it. Because when Sabalenka finally spoke up, she didn't hold back. She didn't filter, she didn't soften the edges. She revealed the tension, the secrets, and the resentment simmering long before their latest clash. And the truth she dropped sent shockwaves no one was ready for. Before the world ever heard Aryna Sabalenka say the words, "I can't stay silent anymore," the tension between her and Coco Gauff had already been simmering beneath the surface. It wasn't the kind of rivalry that explodes overnight. It was the slow burn kind, the kind built on glances, missed handshakes, tiny comments that never made headlines, but never disappeared either. From the outside, everything looked civilized. Two champions, two stars, two faces of the sport. But inside the tour, everyone knew something was off. Players talked about it quietly, in locker rooms. Coaches whispered about it after practice. Even ball kids noticed the silent storms, those moments when Gauff and Sabalenka cross paths, acknowledging each other with a nod that felt more like a warning than respect. Their rivalry hadn't started with a meltdown or a scandal. It began the moment Gauff started beating everyone Sabalenka used to dominate, a new wave rising just as another was peaking. And tennis? Tennis never allows two queens to rule comfortably at the same time. It was the match in Madrid, months earlier, that first hinted at the fracture. A tight three-setter, high pressure, full of long rallies and clenched jaws. Gauff walked off the court victorious, waving to the crowd like it was just another win. But Sabalenka, she stormed out so fast she didn't even wait for her rackets. People assumed it was frustration. But those who looked closely saw something else in her eyes, something closer to betrayal. Because rumor had it, something was said. Something small, something sharp. Something Sabalenka wasn't willing to repeat publicly. By the time they met again at the summer exhibition tournament, everything felt heavier. The press sensed it. Fans sensed it. Even neutral commentators began hinting at strange energy between the two. Gauff was confident, calm, laser-focused. Sabalenka was pacing, restless, chewing her lip between points like she was trying to swallow her own anger. They didn't talk during warm-up. They barely looked at each other during the coin toss. And by the end of that match, one of the most emotional, chaotic showdowns of the season, the tension was almost unbearable. Gauff won again, this time in straight sets, but the score didn't tell the real story. What told the story was Sabalenka's face, tight, flushed, eyes burning with something deeper than frustration. And when they shook hands at the net, Gauff barely whispered, "Good match." But Sabalenka didn't whisper anything back. She didn't even blink. She just walked away, shoulders tense, jaw locked, carrying the weight of everything she'd kept quiet for months. That was the moment fans knew something was coming. Something big, something explosive. Because Sabalenka had always been emotional, but she was never quiet. And when she turned to her team that night and said, "I'm done staying silent," they didn't try to stop her. They knew nothing would. The night of the breaking point didn't begin with chaos. It began with silence. An unsettling kind of calm that always comes right before something erupts. Sabalenka was in the players' lounge, headphones on, replaying the match she had just lost to Gauff. Not for strategy, not for improvement, but because she couldn't believe how it ended and how Gauff behaved. At first, it was the small details that bothered her. The smirk after a broken serve, the way Gauff looked toward her box after every big point, as if sending a message. The subtle comments during changeovers, low enough that microphones couldn't catch, but sharp enough for Sabalenka to hear. Sabalenka had ignored them. She'd swallowed her pride. She'd tried to focus on the tennis. But there was one moment, one single line that she couldn't forget. Late in the second set, when Sabalenka double faulted on breakpoint, Gauff turned to her under her breath and said, You always fold when it matters. It wasn't loud, but it was deadly. Sabalenka's eyes widened. Her grip tightened on her racket. She didn't react then, not fully. She was too locked into the match. But inside, something broke. A crack she'd been patching for months split wide open. After the match, Gauff's handshake had been quick and cold. She said something that sounded like good play, but her eyes told a different story. Victory with a touch of condescension, as if she wanted Sabalenka to know who the new queen was. For Sabalenka, humiliation wasn't the emotion. It was disrespect. Disrespect she was tired of pretending didn't exist. So when she walked into that post-match press room, still sweaty, still shaking, still processing everything, she already knew the truth. Tonight, she wasn't holding back. The reporters noticed immediately. Sabalenka wasn't sitting, she was pacing. She wasn't smiling politely, she was biting her lip like she was trying to keep the words in. But she couldn't. "I'm going to be honest," she began, voice low but sharp. "There's a lot happening on that court that people don't see. Things said, things done, things I've ignored for too long." Her team shifted nervously in the back. They knew where this was going. Sabalenka's voice cracked slightly, not from weakness, but from pent-up frustration. "I respect every player, but respect has to go both ways. And tonight, let's just say the way she acted, the things she said, I'm not okay with it." The room erupted instantly. "What did she say? Are you accusing Coco of unsportsmanlike behavior? Is this a personal conflict?" Sabalenka didn't answer directly. She didn't need to. The fire in her eyes said more than any quote could ever. She finished with one line that would explode across social media within minutes. "People need to know some wins aren't as clean as they look." And with that, she walked out. She didn't look back. She knew she just lit the match. The moment Aryna Sabalenka walked out of that press room, the world outside was already on fire. Her words, sharp, raw, and dangerously honest, spread faster than anyone could contain. Within minutes, clips of her saying, "I can't stay silent anymore," were everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Reddit, every platform lit up with the same question. What did Coco Gauff really say? Fans weren't just curious, they were divided. Some believed Sabalenka instantly, pointing to her history of being brutally honest, never afraid to speak from the heart. Others defended Gauff fiercely, insisting she had always been composed, respectful, unshakable. But one thing was clear, the rivalry had reached a level no one expected. Hashtags surged into trending lists. Hashtag Sabalenka exposes Gauff. Hashtag dirty tactics or drama. Hashtag what did Coco say? Hashtag tennis war. Comment sections turned into battlegrounds. She finally said what others were too scared to say. No way Coco would disrespect her. This is Sabalenka being salty. If Coco really said that, Sabalenka had every right to call it out. Sabalenka is trying to stir controversy because she can't beat her. Influencers who normally avoided tennis suddenly jumped in to capitalize on the chaos. Sports talk shows dedicated emergency segments to the drama. Even former players chimed in, some subtly supporting Sabalenka with cryptic tweets, others hinting that Gauff had always been competitive in ways cameras don't always catch. And within hours, the press turned the situation into a storm of speculation. Some outlets claimed to have sources in the hallway describing tension long before this match. Others claimed Sabalenka's words were a veiled accusation. A few even claimed Gauff's camp was preparing a response. And during all this, Coco Gauff stayed silent. That silence, ironically, only made things worse. Fans interpreted however they wanted. To some, it was the silence of guilt, someone waiting for things to cool down. To others, it was the silence of someone too classy to engage in drama. And then came the leaked footage. Not full audio, Not a clear recording, just a moment caught by a courtside mic, barely audible, distorted, but undeniably real. A faint whisper from Gauff after Sabalenka's double fault, a whisper that sounded a lot like, "You always fold when it matters." It wasn't perfect evidence, it wasn't confirmed, but it didn't matter. The internet decided it was real. Within minutes, the clip had millions of views. Commentators replayed it frame by frame. Audio engineers on TikTok enhanced the sound, and fan accounts slowed it down to prove their point. Suddenly, Sabalenka wasn't seen as overreacting. She was seen as someone who finally snapped after months of disrespect. Meanwhile, Gauff's camp felt the ground shifting beneath them. Silence was no longer enough. Pressure mounted. Her name was being dragged through every corner of the internet. And as fans prepared for her response, the story only grew darker. The line between truth and rumor blurred. Tennis had become a battlefield, and both warriors were now in the center of a storm neither could escape. The next morning, in a state of absolute meltdown, headlines screamed with urgency, sports shows replayed Sabalenka's press conference on a loop, and every fan base dug into its trenches. But the biggest twist? Coco Gauff finally broke her silence. It happened in a short, tense interview outside the practice courts. She didn't schedule a press conference. She didn't prepare a statement. She just spoke because the cameras cornered her. Her words were clipped and controlled, but the tension pulsed underneath. "I didn't disrespect anyone," she said. "I don't trash talk. I never have. I think things have been taken out of context." Taken out of context. Those three words changed everything. Because instantly, the internet split again. Was she denying the comment? Was she admitting she said something but not what people thought? Was she trying to avoid escalating the drama or subtly calling Sabalenka a liar? Sabalenka's fans saw it as evasion. Gauff's fans saw it as maturity. And then came the twist nobody predicted. A member of Sabalenka's team, someone who usually never spoke publicly, made an anonymous comment to a journalist, claiming the tension between the two players went beyond just this match. According to this insider, the rivalry had become deeply personal, with multiple incidents over the past year that Sabalenka chose to stay silent about. That single quote set everything on fire again. Suddenly, this wasn't about one whispered line during a match. This was about a pattern, a history, a rivalry that apparently had far more shadows than anyone realized. Fans began dissecting every handshake, every stare down, every awkward moment from past tournaments. Clips resurfaced showing Gauff walking past Sabalenka without eye contact. Others showed Sabalenka rolling her eyes during one of Gauff's interviews. Every gesture was now evidence. Every expression was a clue. The narrative began spinning out of control. Commentators called it the most toxic rivalry in modern women's tennis. Podcasts speculated whether the WTA needed to intervene. Fan accounts posted conspiracy-level breakdowns, connecting dots that probably didn't exist. But the real fallout hit behind closed doors. Tournament officials reportedly approached both camps, urging them to cool the situation. Sabalenka's team wanted her to stay quiet. Gauff's team wanted her to issue a calmer second statement. But neither player was ready to back down. Sabalenka felt vindicated by the leaked audio. Gauff felt unfairly villainized by something she insisted was misheard. And in the middle of all the chaos, both women were still trying to prepare for their next matches. Matches now loaded with tension, scrutiny, and pressure neither asked for. By the end of the week, the controversy wasn't just a storyline. It was a full-blown crisis, with millions watching to see who would speak next and what truth or bombshell they would drop. Because now the question wasn't just who said what. It was who would snap next. By the time the public found out the storm between Coco Gauff and Aryna Sabalenka had calmed behind closed doors, the damage and the transformation was already done. Their rivalry had evolved into something far bigger than tennis. It had become a mirror, reflecting the pressures, insecurities, pride, and expectations that come with carrying the weight of a global sport. Because even though the meeting ended the conflict, the world wasn't done talking about it. Commentators dissected every angle. Fans continued arguing as if they were defending nations instead of players. Analysts debated whether Sabalenka's emotional honesty was a strength or a flaw. Others questioned if Gauff's silence was maturity or calculated image control. But something fascinating began to happen. Instead of tearing the sport apart, the controversy drew more people in. Everyone wanted to watch their next match, even neutral fans. Some wanted revenge, others wanted redemption. Most just wanted to see two champions who had been pushed to their emotional limits step onto the court again. And when they eventually played their next match, weeks later, the energy was unlike anything tennis had felt all season. There was no stare down, no icy handshake, no tension bubbling under the surface, just intensity. Clean, focused, razor-sharp intensity. Where before their rivalry felt personal, now it felt purposeful. Every point hit harder. Every rally carried weight. Every expression, every breath, every swing hinted at a shared understanding. They had survived the storm, and now the tennis could speak again. And that's the legacy of the moment Sabalenka said, "I can't stay silent anymore." She didn't spark the drama because she hated Gauff. She sparked it because she was tired of burying emotions under professionalism, tired of pretending pressure didn't break her sometimes, tired of acting like rivals aren't allowed to feel. And Gauff? She learned that silence can be misread and that even champions have moments where words slip out unintentionally and spiral far beyond control. Both women walked away changed, not softer, not weaker, but sharper in very different ways. Sabalenka learned the value of vulnerability. Gauff learned the cost of perception. And the world learned that rivalries aren't polished storylines. They're messy, human, complicated, and painfully real. In a strange way, the controversy gave fans something they didn't even know they were missing. Two champions who were more than athletes. Two women who were more than rivals. Two stories that intertwined so deeply that even their conflict became unforgettable. And as their careers move forward, colliding, diverging, crossing paths again and again, one thing is certain. This wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning of a rivalry the world will talk about for years. A rivalry carved not just in power and talent, but in honesty, emotion, and fire. At the end of it all, one question remains. Was this just a misunderstanding or the moment that defined a new era of rivalry? If you enjoyed this deep dive into tennis drama, make sure to subscribe because the stories only get bigger from here.